Hey, friends, and welcome back to Second Cup. I'm your host, Tim Heller. My guest today is the first repeat guest that we've had on Second Cup. It is none other than Lloyd George. Lloyd has been moving and shaking in the business world of podcasts and content creation with his wife, Ashley, and they've got some exciting things happening right now as we record this outro for this episode. So without further ado, let's get to the good stuff. It's time to top off your beverage, get comfy, and enjoy this episode of Second Cup with my friend Lloyd George. All right, back again for the second time. All these technical issues just giving us more time to hang out.
Yeah.
Lloyd George, thank you for coming back on Second Cup, especially at such a wild time in your life, a period of growth for you and your wife and your multiple little businesses, not so little businesses happening. So how you feeling this morning?
I really appreciate that. I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and we always have a great conversation. So I'm sure this time will be no different.
Oh yeah, I will try my best not to disappoint. So real quick, since the last time that we spoke, there's been a lot of movement, and there's soon to be even more movement. And you've talked about it a little bit on your podcast with Ash. And so I'd love to kick it off with just a quick recap of in your words, what has happened in the past almost 6 months since we spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy to think that it was that long ago. That's bizarre. So yeah, there are a lot of moving parts, and I like to think about the creator journey as like a journey that has these highs and these lows. And so depending on when you talk to me, I may feel very sort of like down and very sad, or I may feel like, oh my gosh, like life is great, life is perfect. And right now, I think I'm in those like life is great, life is perfect moments. I think last time we spoke, there was just like a lot of clarity that I was missing in terms of like what my niche should be, like who do I create for, how do I get brand deals, what part
Mm.
of town should I be in, and a lot of those questions have kind of been answered. So just since we last spoke, obviously I launched a podcast course in partnership with LinkedIn, which has only been out for like I think 47 days, and so far we've got like 3,200 people have already like went through the entire course, which is just like
Lloyd,
insane, bizarre. I don't
that's
even know that many people.
wild.
So
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. In addition to that, I've also secured a few. I think last time we spoke, part of what we talked about was just sort of like feeling like, gosh, I want to get more like brand deals, more partnerships, and I'm not really sure like how to do that. And so since then, I've secured some like great partnerships with Spotify, doing some work with Riverside, obviously, and that's just. I think I've kind of found my like cadence and my groove, and I'm feeling good with where I'm at. And then lastly, my wife and I are moving to a different state. We literally just got to DC, and now we are moving to LA. So lots of change, but it's great. We love it. I think we both thrive with this constant movement.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations. Talk about finding your flow of abundance. Like it just takes that throwing that pasta at the wall until something sticks, and it sounds like a lot has really started to stick.
That's so true. And I think like that, I'm so glad you phrase it that way, because I think that's how I want to think about this journey, as this is like, oh, if something isn't going right or it doesn't feel great right now, you're just trying to find your flow, your rhythm, and you will like soon enough. And then soon enough you'll feel like, gosh, everything's going great. So it's definitely like this journey has a lot of ebbs and flows.
Yeah, and so the notes I had taken, I listened to over the past couple days, a couple of the more recent episodes of you and Ash talking about what's been happening, and the I think my favorite episode. So the most recent one is fantastic, and I want to dive into that. But you touched on like that finding your flow and how you find that flow, and in this 6 minute episode talking about talent is not enough,
Mm,
or it's not all about talent, but it's consistency.
right.
Can you speak on that and speak your experience onto that?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. This is giving me so much confirmation, because like before I answer that question, I just want to like get your thoughts on something. I've been exploring this idea that maybe the type of content that I naturally want to create, I think is naturally just not a popular style of content. It's very just sort of like raw, very rough, just like grab your phone, put it up, let's do like one
Mm,
skit, let's record it one time. And that content just does it literally right now just doesn't perform well. I think the type of
yeah.
content we see perform well is more like overproduced, lots of cuts, lots of sound effects, in my opinion, less transparent. And so that was me posting that video, was just me testing, just sort of like, gosh, I wonder if I just like said like, what would you want to put out, Lloyd, without thinking about success or anything? Like, what would that sound like? And I want to do more content like that. That's just like 6 minute bits sharing how I feel, and you resonate with it or you don't. That specific podcast about consistency basically talks about the fact that it stemmed from a post that I saw where this guy named Avi, who's a media exec at podcast, TikTok, so on and so forth. He makes a post and he makes the argument that going from as a creator, and he's like studied all these like large creators, but going from like 0 to 100,000 followers is really not based on consistency. It's not based on talent. It's only based on consistency. And then going from 100,000 to 1 million is based on the systems that you have in place to get you there. And then going from a
Mm,
million to 10 million is based on the team that you have to get you there. And so it just had me thinking that, like, gosh, that kind of resonates with us as creators in a lot of different ways. The first thought is just that, like, there's a lot of advantages that you gain just by being consistent, even if you don't have the right equipment or the right talent to get you there. And just by the fact that people will see you frequently, there's just something that's highly respectable about that. And I think I talk about my experience at a conference running into a few podcast execs and them complimenting me and saying, you're really consistent. Even though that was like the least thing I obsessed about. I obsessed about my camera equipment, my microphone equipment, what to talk about, my niche, but never should I just put something out. It really doesn't matter what it is. And that concept just further proved that for me.
yeah, I mean, it's so true. And I've experienced it as well, not on the scale that you have um, yet, but there's a time not too long ago that I was thinking about just kind of stopping Second Cup and wrapping it up because things were my little business has grown and branched out in ways that I never anticipated and started to kind of pop in some areas that are really exciting. And I'm just kind of, I want to touch on how to pivot and find those different branches a little bit later in our conversation. But it's because I was consistent when it was just me. And before I brought on Julius and Tara and Sarang and Alberth and all these people that are really helping make this happen and make it better.
Yep.
Um, I I had put out 30 episodes by myself, and so people had kind of seen it and seen it on Twitter or seen it wherever else and started reaching out to me again. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe I should listen to this and just use this as a learning experience, not put pressure on this to be the next armchair expert, the next, whatever show you're listening to all the time, but really take this experience with this team and how can we scale this out so that we can tell not just my stories or just have conversations with me, but talk about other stuff with other people and grow that out that way.
That's a great point. I think your consistency is commendable, and I certainly look at you as an inspiration in that regard.
Wow. Thank you. I'll be taking that with me this week. Damn. Thanks. Um, so with that consistency and with where you're at now and finding that niche, can you talk a little bit about that process of the ups and downs of riding that wave of, oh, this is amazing, like I am in my power right now, versus, is this working, is this worth it, like, do I post this again today, or do I just like pivot and call it quits?
That's a great question. And I think like I struggle with that a lot. Like at least like I'd say my cadence is like 2 months on, 2 months off. And part of it is because I feel like there's so many external factors that I don't get to control. Like I don't get to control if a video goes viral or if a video performs well. I don't get to choose when brands want to work with me, and so it's very easy to feel like, oh gosh, like none of this crap that's out of my control is working. So I'm in the lows right now. And I think what I've been trying to do is just remind myself in those moments that, you know what, like this is a marathon, and this is in the like entire scheme of everything you're doing. This is such a small sliver of time. And it's going to be okay if you just keep doing what you're doing. It's all going to work out. And I will say, just sort of like, The one thing I've realized in the last few weeks is that, like, even when it doesn't feel like it and nothing's working, people are watching you. I would go through these like times where I felt like, gosh, my content isn't working or no one is supporting me. And then I'd go get lunch or breakfast with someone that is like way bigger than me in terms of being a creator. And they'd be like, dude, I see all your stuff. I love all your content. It's great. Keep it up. It's amazing. And they'd give me all these compliments. And I just didn't even know they like knew who I was or knew my content. And so just like even when it doesn't feel like it, and when it feels like you're in those lows, that's just to you. To everyone else, they're still seeing your content. They're still, supporting you. It just may not feel like that to you.
Yeah, and that's something I actually was thinking about on yesterday morning because I was like, I see like I see the friends, I see the community and the family that's watching this stuff, and they aren't liking it, and like they're not commenting. It's like, where y'all at? Let's go.
Right.
Like,
Right.
meanwhile,
Seriously.
I'm just trying to like and comment on as much as I can. Like, let's get more eyes on these people. But
Yeah.
you can't. I mean, that's a toxic thought that creeps into my brain. That's just like, well, if I'm doing this for other people, like why aren't they doing it for me too?
Yeah.
But
Seriously.
it's not that at all. And it is a fleeting thought. And it's just kind of like I know that whatever's supposed to be for them is supposed to be for them. Whatever's supposed to be for me is supposed to be for me.
Yeah, and
And
that's a great way to think about it. That's like something I'm trying to adopt now. Just sort of like the things that are going to come to you are already decided. You're like nothing more or nothing less is going to come to you because someone did or didn't like something.
it's a daunting thought, but also it feels like a weighted blanket
Yep.
sometimes. It's like, okay, cool. I'm on this path that's just taking that one step further.
Yeah.
With so you spoke about that anxiety that comes around like getting those brand deals or what some of those goals are. And I want to touch on two big things that you've really that I admire that you do on a regular basis is you speak your goals out to everyone on all your platforms. You talk about your numbers about it, like with those goals with everyone. And how did you start getting those brand deals? I'd love to start with that speaking your goals out, and some people can call it manifesting. There's lots of I've seen randomly like a bunch of videos about people talking about manifesting and how much they hate it, but I think that if you have the right translation of or the right reception to manifestation and what that really looks like, that it's not so passive, that it can be a really powerful thing. But let's talk about goals
Yeah.
and how you have just knocked so many of them out of the park in such a short amount of time.
I really appreciate that. And it's so funny because whenever I create these goals, I think Ash and I both like our first thought is always like, what feels impossible? And that's
Yes.
how we come up with them. And like for this year's goals, we're still at the phase where it's like, yeah, I don't know if we're actually gonna do that. That seems very vague. But that's like the beauty of it, just to see it come together and to see you get closer to that is very inspiring. I will say the biggest reason we started doing the goals and the reason we've continued it is I think what we do as humans is we make these big goals at the beginning of the year, for example. Then at the end of the year, we say, did we hit that goal or did we not? Right. And we miss that in between. And so what like tracking my goals has enabled me to do is like celebrate like the small wins. And so it's like, last week I gained, 300 new podcast downloads, or even if it's smaller than that, like 10 more people listened. Just those like small wins, like being able to like take that momentum, take it in, notice what's happening, appreciate it, celebrate it, and then go to the next thing. It makes a huge difference in your belief of whether you can or cannot achieve that goal. And so it's been a great momentum builder for me. In terms of like starting with like brand deals, I think number one, like you'll be surprised how many people want to support you just because you said you're doing something. So there's a lot of people last year when I said like, hey, I'm trying to make $15,000 in brand deals. There's a lot of people that would just comment on those posts just to like support me. Like one guy, he's actually a successful creator, so I will shout him out. His name is Austin Hankowitz. He's like a finance creator on TikTok. But when I posted my goals last year, he like just followed me. He DM'd me. It's like, hey, love what you're doing. Saw your goals. I want to help you in these 2 ways. Let's hop on a call. Like on that call, he was literally trying to connect me with like he's connected me with brands that are now like paying me. He's introduced me to people. He's like, if you want to travel to my state to interview me, he's like, you'll be surprised just how many people want to help you just because you put your goals out there.
Wow.
And even as I like reach out to brands, one of the things I've noticed is that like I say like 30 to 40% of them, they don't care about the numbers. Like they like you as a person, they like what you're doing, and so they want to support you. Those are things you will never realize if you don't put your goals out there.
Yeah, talk about facing your fears and talking to those inner voices that tell you you can't, or that are those doubting voices.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that you just saying that here makes me feel empowered to do the same and just start sharing that stuff. I've started working with a friend to help me with social media management and start that delegation
Yeah.
process of like, okay, cool. I cannot be everything to everyone all the time now. And now that things are growing, I need help. And so we're just trying to come up with ideas for content, and that voice of like, nobody wants to listen to me. Nobody wants to see my mug on their Instagram any more than they're already seeing it with the podcast and stuff like that. But it is just having to, you speak it into existence,
Yeah, that's so
and ask for help.
it's so funny that you say that because I resonate a lot with that, especially as like creators. We're posting so much content. We're constantly trying to analyze like, is this too much content? Like, how are people like perceiving me? And that's something like I think about a lot because I'm posting a lot of content. And I will say like one thing I'm trying to get better at this year is like realizing that like, you know what, like at the very least, like I'm the hero of my story, and at the very least, on like my social channels, I should feel empowered to feel like, you know what, if I want to post 10 times a day, like I can do that. And I don't know that I feel that way right now, just because I'm constantly in the mindset of like thinking like, what does like my audience want from me? And that's like that could be helpful as, like, as a creator, but it can also be like detrimental.
Yeah, it can be a huge hindrance to overthink things, because I feel like the reason why people watch anybody is because they've connected with something that they're already doing.
Mm.
And so the best thing you can do is to just keep being yourself and growing and try new things and pivot. And it's weird. It's weird. It feels I don't know if you can share this sentiment, but as I've been scrolling lately and consuming, it's been a little daunting, and those doubting voices have started to creep a little bit more, because I feel like there is so much. It's not even I feel that way. There is so much content out there. I can feel like, where's my audience? Where's my slice? Where do I fit? Have you experienced any of that, and how have you continued to push through that as you've seen this growth with all the different branches of your
Yeah,
company?
that's a great question. Like, put it this way, I feel that way like 97% of the time. And I think like there's like these few moments where I have like clarity and I feel like, oh, like, okay, like this is like my lane. Like, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, like this is like my target niche. And I feel like that's what I've been searching for, is just sort of like clarity on just sort of like who I'm creating for, the type I should be creating. And when I do have that, I feel like like the consistency of video, like when you said that, that was such like an affirmation, because I was just telling my wife yesterday that, you know what, like I think in like 3 years, like on YouTube, we're going to want more like authentic content. We're going to want more content that feels just sort of like, you know what, it's just a guy sitting in a chair with a camera that's an iPhone and he's talking. And I kind of see that a little bit, like just like as a trend with some of like the larger creators like Ali Abdal. Like there's videos that are like overproduced, but then there's other videos where it's just like, it's not even like a real thumbnail, it's just a picture and it's him on a cell phone and he's just like talking. And so when I see things like that, and it just reaffirms that like, okay, like you're thinking about your content the right way, and I have some of that clarity, I don't feel like I'm in a world that feels like it has too many content creators.
Mm, yeah, I mean, and how has your philosophy changed on your gear? For like, people ask, I've been working with like some more like corporate entities on some of their marketing strategies and building out their messaging and stuff like that. And they ask like, okay, well, like, what kind of gear do you have, or what kind of gear do we need? And my philosophy is like, use what's in your
Yeah.
pocket. You have, if you've got an iPhone, you got a Samsung, like you have a good enough camera. It's just using it the right way, which is not even that hard.
Yeah, that's a great point. I share the same philosophy you do, because I've always been a person that's just like, no, 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 like go home, start today. Like don't buy anything, just like start today. And that philosophy was further validated when I am one of the podcasts I manage is a lady that's an influencer, and she gets like almost 40,000 downloads per month, and she films just with like her
Wow.
cell phone. She was on she films like in Anchor, and so just like seeing that in real time and seeing someone that successful just sort of like do it with the resources she has been like further like it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's 40,000 a month.
Yeah, bizarre.
What a
I know,
what a
bizarre.
dream. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So on the subject of your podcast management, tell us more about Podman, how that started and how it's grown in the past couple months.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, a lot of people may know that this is actually the second time I've launched Podman, and the first time I launched it roughly 6 months ago, it failed miserably. But now that I've started it again, it's actually been going pretty well. I also keep people updated with my goals on how that's going. Basically, Podman is a podcast management service. The word Podman is a combination of the word podcast and admin. And so we basically help influencers and brands manage their podcasts. We handle like their post production, their show notes, that sort of stuff. And it's been going fantastic. Not only do I get to like work with my wife, which we wanted to do together, like have our own business for a long time, I get to help podcasters and I really enjoy that. The business has been growing really fast. We've basically been adding one new client per month since January. Our total revenue right now is roughly at about, I think, I can't remember. I think it's like 40 something hundred, and our profit is about 2,900.
That's fantastic. And what are your goals with Podman? And you speak on this, and I encourage everyone who's listening to this to go check out the Creator Hub podcast, just because it's the updates
Yep.
monthly that you all share together, and just the conversation back and forth between y'all. I think is incredibly valuable and just wildly encouraging and
Yep.
charming to hear a husband and wife team talk about their work in this way and each of your different perspectives and how that brings value individually to the business and as a
Yeah,
powerhouse.
I really appreciate that. It's fantastic. I love working with Ash. It's so much easier, not only because we're in the same house and we could just go in the next room and record, but I think it is just like a cool way for us to like spend quality time together as well. Our goals for this year are to get to 10,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Obviously, that's not all profit, but what that essentially means is we'll need about six more clients, and so I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like it's possible, and there's another part of me that just feels like we'll see.
Yeah. And with that feeling of does it feel possible and touching on what you said earlier with let's pick a goal that feels impossible. I had a friend of ours, a family friend, when we first moved down to Texas, he said, like, what are your goals? And I was like, well, I'd like to make like six figures a year doing like my first goal is 100K from voiceover
Mhm.
work and just have that. And he said, that's it. And I was like, hey, I mean, like, that's a lot of money for
Yeah, it
me.
is.
and he's a very successful realtor and does like really, really
Mhm.
well and lives his best bougie
Yeah.
life and works really, really hard. But he said, Tim, you that's not big enough. You have
Mhm.
to why you cannot limit your goals to just that. You have to think you can set that goal, but you have to push yourself past what you think is possible. How have you and Ash talked about your goals that way and with your business and what are some of the new impossible goals that you have?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think naturally, just like from a personality standpoint, I'm more closer to the person that's going to say, you know what, like I'm fairly analytical. I want to know like not only what the goal is, but like how we're going to get there. And I need the math to make sense.
Mm,
But with like our new approach to goals, it's sort of like the opposite and just sort of like how big can we dream, but that is still in the realm of possibility. So, I think what was that girl fit last year our goal was 15,000 and we ended up making 20,000 in brand deals and sponsorships. This year the goal is 50,000, which just seems like insanely impossible. But yeah, I think it's like it needs to be big enough that it feels like yeah, that's a stretch, but still somewhat like like realistically like possible to some degree. And I think my with just sort of like what's been happening so far this year, the idea and what the word like what's possible doesn't mean anything to me because a lot of what's been happening is
mm-hmm.
just stuff that like I never even could have imagined that like it would be happening to me. And even sometimes,
Yeah.
I was on a call with Ash and I was talking to a brand that was interested in doing some like ongoing work. And we get on the call, I'm like super excited. It's a large brand. And I'm like thinking in my mind, like, gosh, if they can pay me this amount of money, this will be amazing. And I'm so glad I didn't say that amount of money because they said what like the budget was for this campaign and it ended up being like larger than what I anticipated. So there's just small instances like that where I'm reminded that like dude, like anything's possible if you could like dream it, imagine it. It's
Yeah.
like what are the limitations we pose on ourselves, I think are greater than the limitations we face in like reality.
Hmm. Yeah. And so how going from failing the first time you started Podman, what did you and to now, like what did you learn in that failure process? Because I feel like it's so much, it's I love to celebrate the wins, but being able to look back and look at the times that you fell on your face or really just did not deliver on something that you thought you could, and how you learn and grow from that is where I really enjoy living. And I don't enjoy living in those moments, but I enjoy looking back at from the other side. But how did y'all navigate that together, and what were the feelings that led up to that, like the before, during, and after of that, of the failure of Podman the first
Yeah,
round?
that's such a great question, because I think one thing that isn't spoken about enough is the fact that like failure is a part of the process, and like you're going to experience it.
Say it
It's
again, say it again, say it
failure is
again.
1000% a part of the process, and you're gonna experience it if you haven't, and probably multiple times. And so I think part of what that experience taught me is that, you know what, like when we make these large, lofty goals to start these things, we don't always anticipate the journey going from where we are to accomplishing them. And a lot of the times, that journey to accomplishing these big goals, we're doing a lot of things for the first time, which means you're going to fail. Like no one's taught you how to manage brand deals. No one's taught you how to get clients. No one's taught you anything. So you're gonna fail, right? I think the difference that I now have in my perspective is that like I was looking at failure kind of like um, something to avoid, something that's bad. And now I look at failure just as like, oh, perfect. Like, I'm glad I went through that. I'm glad I know now. I'll do it different next time. Perfect. And when you think about it from that perspective, I think the more times you fail, right, the better, right? The more things you learn, and
Yeah.
the more likely that thing isn't like, the more likely that thing is to not happen again. And so that's sort of like what I've learned from that experience with Pop in the first time.
Yeah, I always say when I'm working with my team, and Julius and Tara have heard this over and over, and Sarang and Albert too, is like, let's just fail forward together. If we can just be like ruthlessly curious about what we're doing and how we can be better at it, and we just fail forward, it's very, I think you have to really try to fail
Yeah.
backwards in a lot, and you have to really not be in your power, not be in yourself to really fail backwards and burn
Yeah.
bridges. And people, like you said, with people wanting to help and being interested in supporting you, like you really have to work hard to burn bridges, I feel
Yeah,
like.
1000% agree. And I will just add to that too. I think that um, sometimes, like when you fail on your own, like let's just say you're a creator and you work on your own and you fail, that is a little different than when you're working with other people. Let's say like brands, for instance, or in my case, like Podman, I'm working with like clients, right? And so, like when you fail in those instances where you work with other people, it can be very easy to feel guilty, or to feel like you let people down, or to feel
Yeah.
bad, or to have a sense of shame. And so I think like, in addition to sort of acknowledging that like fear is just a part of the journey, I think there's a level of like confidence that you have to gain. There's also a level of like self forgiveness that's required. You definitely have to give yourself a lot of grace to know that like, dang, I messed up. Not only did I like screw it up for me, but I let someone else down, or their podcast down, or whatever it is. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Next time I'll do better.
Yeah. Yeah. That grace is key.
Yeah, yeah.
Excuse me. So when it comes to growing your business and everything that you and Ash have built together, how have you navigated the delegation of bringing on new team members, hiring new people, and what was that feeling that was in your stomach and your chip? Like, what was the feeling? Where did it live that you felt like we need help? Now is the time.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think part of our goal with like building our team was we need to build this in a way where it's not dependent on us. Like we both do a lot of like other things outside of this business that if it is dependent on us, a lot of stuff is likely to fall through the cracks. And so from the jump, we decided we were going to work with like contractors to just sort of like help us carry out the work. We were going to start building out systems just to make things a little more automated and efficient. And basically, Ash manages the production side of the house, so she's managing the clients on a monthly basis. She's managing our team members, and I am more like front facing. I create the content and I interact with like our potential leads or like sales clients, and that just like works perfect for us. We both like the aspects of the work that we do, and so it's been cool just to work together in this capacity and learn sort of like what some of her strengths are, what some of my strengths are, and how we can like make those further complement each other.
Mm, yeah. And do you feel like, I think so? I'll share what my experience has been is that I feel like a control freak, and I know that my team is awesome, and but and I'm sure that they have seen this part of me as well and received that, like, okay, well, can we try this next? What about this? Can we just pivot this way? It's like, great job, but let's try it this way. How, how much have you been able to let go
Yeah, that's a great.
of that and trust? Because I trust I trust everybody inherently, and I just believe in what we're doing and what everybody's ideas are and what we're creating. And it's just taking off that solopreneur hat and pivoting into that, like, okay, cool, we're running a team together. Like, I don't feel like I'm the
Yeah.
boss. It feels like we have this
Yeah,
team.
that's a great question. I struggle with that for sure. I'm definitely like control freak number 10. And I feel like, like Ash, like coming on has like helped me a lot just because I know like she's really good at what she does and she does like a phenomenal job like managing the team. And so it's like, it's nice to know that that's something I don't even have to worry about. I don't think about like, I probably like, I'm hands off a little too much, honestly, just because I know she has it like under control. But a lot of the things I do in like my creator business where I'm like, I have like a few video editors I work with that manage like my videos, and in those areas, I still see like a lot of like what is it called, hovering management or like over
Helicopter
helicopter.
mom,
Yeah,
helicopter
I
parent.
still do
Yeah.
a lot of that on that side of the business, and I think it, for me, what I'm realizing is it definitely comes down to trust. So there's definitely people on my team that make me feel like, dude, I got this under control. I know how to do this better than you know how to do this, so like it's taken care of. And once I gain that level of trust, I'm like good letting go. It's just going from like solopreneur to that point, hiring your first person, your second, your third, where I still feel like, okay, like I have to gain that level of trust with that person. But I
Yeah.
will say that's definitely like necessary. And I don't know that like a lot of creators think about businesses that way. I think creators just think like, oh, perfect. Like I'm making money from this. I just need to keep like executing this work and getting more and more and more clients. But we don't think about like what happens if like this succeeds and we keep growing, how we manage that.
Yeah, that's been a huge lesson that I personally have been learning. I feel like in the past, honestly, since the beginning of this year, it's just like, how do we scale?
Mm,
And it with some of these, the my brother and I accidentally started kind of a marketing creative consultancy. It's like we're strategic creatives that can come in and help look at your brand's
yeah.
messaging and your website and your videos and all that and your content and look at it and be like, okay, cool. Well, like, who
Yeah.
are you? Like, what are you doing? And all of that. And starting that and having that kind of take off has been, I feel like I'm getting my MBA because I'm working with all of these C-suite level people that are saying like, okay, well, what are our
Mhm.
KPIs or ROIs or all of this stuff? And I'm just like, yeah, and like, but now it's looking at it from the point of scale. Like, how do we build out? Like, how do I show in the books that you could buy this portion of my business from me? How do you look at like growing this? And what have been some of your experiences and resources that you've really leaned heavily on to navigate
Yeah, that's
this?
a great question. Because it's like, that's a good point. We talk a lot about how, like, yeah, as a creator, you need to have a business, you need to be entrepreneurial, but we don't also factor that that's like hard. That's like an entire skill set. Like, learning how to run a business is not easy. Like, there's a lot of stuff you have to learn. And it's an entirely different skill set than just like hitting record and planning your content. So, for me, I think naturally I'd like to think of myself as very like entrepreneurial, and I've always had a passion for business. But since starting this business, it has been like I've been doing a lot of things for the first time, and it's given me a playground to learn how to do things and learn how to. This is the first time I've had any like real businesses pay me monthly to do stuff for them, and so it's like
Yeah.
it's a good feeling to know that like, man, this is rewarding and it's cool that these people trust me, but there's also a lot I don't know and I'm learning on the fly. And so what that has looked like for me practically is like being intentional about like scheduling one-on-ones and calls with people and saying like, how do you do this in your business? So for instance, I mean, you actually connected me with some like podcast managers that were like significantly bigger than me, and I had some calls with them, and just the amount of like information I learned was like insane. And it just reminded me
Mm.
just like not only like how small I am, but just how much more I have to learn. And it was like very, very rewarding, very fruitful. I'm one of those people where if like I see you doing what you're doing, I could kind of just pick up context clues. I'll follow you. I'll start to learn like how you treat your clients. I'll start to see like how you hire people. I'll start looking at your job descriptions. I can just learn so much just from a distance, just by like watching you. So just knowing that these
Hmm.
people exist was like very, very rewarding to me.
That's
And can I
awesome. Well,
just
I'm very happy to hear. Yeah. Oh, go
I
ahead. Go
just want
ahead.
to make one quick point on your last point, because you were talking about the fact that like learning how to scale businesses and people starting businesses. And I think for creators, like last night, I had an interesting realization, which is that like I no longer feel like subscribers and followers matter. And I got this realization because I was looking at a pretty large YouTuber that has maybe like, I think 115,000 subscribers, but all of his YouTube videos, like I say, like the last 25 videos have less than 300 views. So when you think about it
Hmm.
from that point standpoint, like the subscribers are kind of irrelevant. There's no real like big difference with the fact that he has them. But this specific entrepreneur has gone on to like start a business, and that's exactly how he thinks about his YouTube. He's just like, yo, if even 300 people see this because it's in my niche, that's basically 300 potential leads, and maybe only like one of them like decides to work with me for that specific month. I've already like double and over made my money back because he has like a larger ticket item, kind of like I do. And so I think
Hmm.
in the future, like subscribers and follower counts don't really matter. I think like having an engaged community, having a business where you make money, like like I'm technically a pretty small creator. Like on Instagram, I only have like 1,000 followers, but the fact that I make almost like $5,000 from all my creator businesses is just like fantastic. That's great. Like, and so like I was so
Yeah.
obsessed with just like followers, like grow, 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 grow. But that really technically doesn't matter. Like you can still make a living from this and have a small following.
100% heard. And that is something that another thing that we've talked about in meetings with everybody, with Tim Heller Creative and everybody that we're working with, is like, let's not go for the moonshot. It has very drastically shifted from in the past year, even from you have to be viral to do anything to let's build a small engaged
Yeah.
audience. And from there, that's the real value that you have. That's what's going to keep brands coming back. I feel like that's what people want. It's that
Yeah.
small town feel, and like that we are catering, or they're following us because we cater to something that
Right.
they need. And it's, even if it's 1,000 people, 500 people, it's creating value in that smaller sense.
1,000%. And I definitely need your consulting services. I was just thinking about that when I was in bed. I was like, gosh, I need to work with someone that could like look at everything I do from the outside in and just tell me if it's like congruent from like a messaging standpoint. Because that's hard. You really don't know
Yeah,
when
I
you're in
mean,
it.
yeah, and that's something that's interesting that we found is, my brother and I were talking about like what is, as when we got our first client, it was through a client of mine that I had done some VO work for, and I ended up producing a course for him. And it's Mark Zides. He was on the first episode of this season, and he talked about selfless
Mhm.
networking. Like, he just was like, hey, I'm doing this, I've got a friend in Dallas who's got a startup, they need some help. And my brother is a copywriter and has worked with some big agencies, and we've always kind of kicked around the idea of like, oh man, wouldn't it be so fun to just kind of like dink around and create something
Yeah.
together, work together. And then it just fell in our lap.
Mhm.
And it is really interesting to see that. It's validating to see that like the creative lens is still, or it's so valuable, and it's a little bit novel in those more corporate
Yeah.
settings.
That's awesome.
um but yeah, man, whatever you need, I am down. So any excuse where we get to hang and talk about stuff, and if it's about work stuff or life stuff,
I
I'm
love
there.
it.
You got me, man. um Lloyd, thank you so much for taking as much time as you did this morning. I know y'all have a lot going on, and the move is happening soon. um do you have a place yet in LA, or where are y'all
Yeah,
looking?
so I actually don't. And part of that is intentional. We just don't know anything about like the neighborhoods, so we're definitely going to be like Airbnb-ing it for a bit. Also, we're going to try and head to Atlanta and then London before heading to like LA. So it's a lot of like moving
Nice.
parts here. But yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna Airbnb it. And if for anyone listening to this, if you have any cool neighborhoods you recommend in LA, definitely like drop them in the comments on any of the clips or in this podcast app because we need all the help we can get.
Yeah, let's help them out. Let's get them in a good area. And I heard Ash saying she needs trees, she needs a park. So let's get her everything that she
Yeah.
needs, all that green space for our friend from Mississippi.
Yeah.
Um, all right, Lloyd, I'm going to come up with some other quickfire questions. This is the first repeat guest situation that we've had, so we need to figure something out here. Okay, what is a podcast that you're listening to that you think everybody should be listening
Yeah.
to?
So I say the newest podcast I'm listening to now is called 20 Hertz. And the person that recommended to me is like an audio genius. Like they're like an audio engineer like I've never seen before. And this person was telling me that this podcast had amazing sound design. So I was like, if they're saying that, I need to listen to it. And I heard it and it's just flawless. Which I think
I
you'll
love it.
actually love
20
it
hertz.
because you the last most recent episode is about like VO stuff.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool. I'll check that out this week. I'm traveling to Atlanta, of all
Nice.
places, for a voiceover conference. It'll be
Yeah.
great. Okay, what is a fear that has been popping up for you recently, and how are you
Yeah,
navigating it?
I'd say the fear is that I don't have enough time to accomplish all the things I want to accomplish. And the way that I'm handling that right now is working an insane amount of hours, which is not sustainable. But when I have a better solution, I'll let you know.
Awesome. I think this will be the last one. If there is one sound effect that you can make with your mouth right now or your body right now to describe how you feel about the next week, what would it be?
Uh, it would be a I
And you got
yeah,
to do
yeah.
it. You can't just
Okay, okay,
describe
okay.
it.
Yeah, no, no, no. I gotcha. And I just
Take a second, gather
yeah.
yourself. We can, if you need to take your headphones out, if there's a movement along with it, we can do
No, but
that
I
too.
can make it with my mouth, right? Okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
Here we go. Dung. Do you know what that is? It's like
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
The
Yeah,
bowl, the meditation bowl. I was
exactly.
like, wow,
Exactly.
that
I heard
all
someone
right.
on Instagram do it yesterday, and I was like, oh man, that's what I want to take into the next week, just like peace. Um,
Yes.
so
Amazing. Well, we'll splice that into its own clip and just have that on loop so everybody can listen.
yeah, great idea. Great idea.
Well, Lloyd, thank you again, man. It's so good to see your face and to hear everything that's going on. Thank you for another awesome conversation. And yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever we get into together in the next couple
Yeah,
months
thanks
here.
for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Good gravy. Everybody, Lloyd George again over delivers. He is just one of my favorite people in the creative space right now. So if you're not following him, please make sure that you're following him on all social media platforms at Lloyd, not George, and check out his website, bigcreator.energy, the Creator Hub podcast and everything that they have going on. Their newsletter is incredible. I genuinely read it every time that it comes out. It's one of 2 that I actually read. Believe me when I say you do not want to miss out on all the things that they have coming their way, both known and unknown. So give them a follow on social media, subscribe to their newsletter, and make sure you're listening to their podcast because they drop some insanely helpful, inspirational nuggets. As always, thank you to everyone helping me behind the scenes, Julia Shepard-Morgan, Tara Seuss, Auberth Bursey, and Sarang Sharma on handling all of the production and content needs that this show requires to properly promote all of our wonderful guests. If you are a small, medium, or large-sized business and want to help promote your business on our show, we will have a one-pager coming out soon with pricing info for pre, mid, and post-show ads, as well as opportunities for artists to collaborate, musicians, graphic designers, voiceover artists. And we also will be launching a Patreon soon. So please stay tuned. Make sure you're following at Tim Heller Creative on social media and subscribe to this podcast to stay abreast of all of the exciting things that we have going on in order to create more shows and more of Second Cup for all of you. Thank you all so much for listening to another episode of Second Cup, and stay tuned for more incredible conversations with really cool people. Toodle-doo.